Contracts with concert venues, sports venues, theaters, to be a vendor, and they are our client.
Can you just talk about the different players, from the artist, promoter, venue operator, et cetera, and how their incentives may differ from one another and how those incentives ultimately affect the price?
Well, I don't think there is a standard model, but a typical type of model would be an artist who has a manager. Manager might take 15% of the artist's gross take from a concert, and the manager will negotiate with the promoter.
The promoter has taken risk, has basically gone to an artist and said, I'm willing to guarantee you a certain amount of money for the right to present your performance in this given venue.
The contracts are to some extent like a book contract where the artist will get an advance. The promoter goes and negotiates with the venue to hold the concert at the venue.
And the promoter does a little bit of math, figures out how many seats they have available, what the production costs are, what the guarantee they might have offered the artist is, and arrives at pricing for the show, arrives at a total gross they need to achieve for the show.
The promoter will hire a company typically to distribute the tickets.
And the venue is responsible for effectively telling us for every single event what are the ticket prices that we need to charge and what are the associated fees that go with that.
Ticketmaster is the major player in that market.
And then we take their direction and make those tickets available to the fans through our website, Ticketmaster.com, and our affiliated partners.
The revenue breakdown among the different parties will vary depending on a given deal, but typically between 30 and 50% of the ticket price goes to cover costs, with roughly 85% of the remainder going to the performers and 15% to the promoter. And then there are those much unloved service fees that vendors like Ticketmaster add. In New York, they average 21% of the ticket price, but as we heard earlier, they can reach 100% of face value.
Something that's not widely understood is that these service fees, often part of them goes back to the venue.
In a percentage that varies widely, frankly, depending on the venue and the relationship they have to Ticketmaster.
So Ticketmaster takes all of the PR hit for these egregious service fees, but actually a lot of that money spreads its way around the rest of the food chain.
It's actually historically kind of part of Ticketmaster's business model to take on the burden of that negative sentiment.
In 2009, then Ticketmaster CEO Irving Azoff appeared before a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee, which was concerned that Ticketmaster's upcoming merger with Live Nation Entertainment would hurt consumers.
Ticketmaster was set up as a system where they took the heat for everybody. Ticketmaster gets a minority percentage of that service charge. In that service charge are the credit card fees, the rebates to the buildings, rebates sometimes to artists, sometimes rebates to promoters.
We would say it in the hallways. The reason that we're as successful as we are is because we take those bullets on behalf of the venue, the artist, the promoter.
Of course, if you worked for Ticketmaster, like David Marcus does, you'd probably say that too. But all the evidence we've been hearing today, from economists who've researched the ticket industry and governments who've investigated it seems to back up the argument that Ticketmaster does the bidding of other parties. The evidence also points to a fairly bizarre ecosystem where certain parties want to keep prices low for appearance's sake, but also want to make as much money as they can. And they've built in a series of opaque transactions to make that happen.
I said to a manager recently, is the concern about selling out? And he said there are two concerns about selling out. One is that they don't sell out the house, which is what I meant, but the other is that they're being viewed as having sold out to the capitalists and that they're gouging their fans.
Artists value the ability to say, we're sold out. And we sold out in a minute or 2 minutes. And that is historically a banner to wave that reflects your, stardom. But from an economic perspective, that's a disaster. If you sold out in a minute, you underpriced dramatically, right?
A lot of artists have their cake and eat it too. They'll set prices at what looks like an artificially low level, but then in excess of 20% of tickets will never get sold to fans and get kept by the producers, the promoters, the venue, or house seats of some sort. And then those seats have a way of finding their way onto the secondary market.
Yeah, there's two different greed lines.
That is Ken Lowson.
Okay, so I invented ticket bots about, 18 or 19 years ago.
That might be a bit of an overreach. Others were working on ticket bots too. But still, we've been hearing about the supply side of ticket selling, how the allocation happens, how prices are set, and so on. Ken Lowson, as a ticket broker, or if you will, a scalper, sat at the intersection of supply and demand. Okay, and what about those greed lines?
You want the fan to get mad at a misdirected person than at the artist because they lose their fans that way. Like they can price their ticket at $150 before their fans puke. But, a scalper can sell the same fan a seat for $2,000 and they're not mad at the artist. They're mad at the scalper. But they still pay it.
Coming up on Freakonomics Radio, how people like Lowson got hold of the tickets that you can't.
I got really lucky with a super genius out of Bulgaria.
We talk about possible fixes to the screwed up ticket market.
It's blown away our expectations.
But why even the best fixes might not be good enough.
Everybody's making money on scalping. Everybody from top to bottom.
Freakonomics Radio is supported by Magoosh. Studying for standardized tests is stressful. The ACT and SAT influence college admissions and scholarships. The GRE, GMAT, LSAT, and MCAT count a lot for grad school. Fortunately, Magoosh Online Test Prep helps students wake up on test day confident and prepared. Magoosh provides students with hundreds of practice questions, study schedules, and video lessons, plus access to expert tutors. Best of all, plans start at $79. Enter promo code FREAK at magoosh.com for 20% off.
Freakonomics Radio is supported by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/freak. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030. Freakonomics Radio is supported by Masterclass. Masterclass produces online video classes taught by the best in the world. Available classes include Gordon Ramsay teaches cooking, Aaron Sorkin teaches screenwriting, Serena Williams teaches tennis, and many more. Beautifully produced and carefully curated, Masterclass gives you access to the best at their craft so that you can master yours. Get Masterclass for yourself or for the lifelong learner on your holiday list. More information available at masterclass.com/freak. As we've been hearing, there are a number of ways in which the live event ticket market is not a typical market. You're buying an experience versus a product or a service. It happens at a specific time and place. Also, the people who create and produce live events, Broadway shows, for instance, they have a relationship to their product that runs particularly deep.
When I was a kid, the reason I got hooked on theater was my parents took me a lot because theater was, affordable.
That's the Broadway producer Hal Luftig. Among his many shows is Kinky Boots.
Tickets were $3.50. It didn't break the bank.
If I were a rich man,
we were all the way up on the balcony. I saw Fiddler on the Roof from the second to last row.
And it still worked. Broadway prices today are quite a bit higher, especially for the hottest shows like Hamilton.
Good afternoon. This is Jeffrey Seller speaking. I am the producer of Hamilton, an American musical.
Now, When most people think about the role of a theatrical producer, in as much as most people ever do think about that role, which may not be so much, no offense, what probably comes to mind is Max Bialystock, the producers.
Step 1, we find the worst play ever written. Step 2, we hire the worst.
So can you talk about what you actually do as a producer and how that may or may not resemble what Max Bialystock did?
Well, first of all, I don't own a cardboard belt, so there's a difference right there. And I don't have Ula working for me in my office.
When you got it, flaunt it.
I'm a lot skinnier than Max Bialystock, and I would never take advantage of an old lady to get a few dollars out of her pocketbook to put into my show.
Hello, gorgeous. Did you bring the checkie? Bialy can produce plays without checkies. Oh.
I kind of say what a producer does is serves as that owner or CEO that kind of oversees everything. I am responsible for finding the funding for the production. A producer also has his hand in the actual management of it day to day.
Right. Well, one of the principal jobs that the producer has to fulfill is setting the prices. And the first thing we have to look at is how much money does it cost to run the show every week?
Very early on in a production's life, money needs to be spent on, if for nothing else, just hiring the author, the director. They all get a little bit of a fee to start. And there are things like getting the rights and getting the creative team. And you'd be amazed how expensive crawl.
Well, a Broadway musical these days can cost anywhere from $10 million to $20 million. And it is certainly common for me to invest up to 5% of the budget personally. And just to put it in perspective of what that financial risk is, 80% of shows do not pay back their original capitalization. Of the 20 that return the capital, probably half of them make a very modest profit, like maybe a 4 or 5% return on capital. And then you have your blockbusters that come around every now and then that become enormous windfalls in which investors can multiply their original investment sometimes by 10 to 20 times.
You have Lion King, you have Phantom of the Opera, you have Chicago, Kinky Boots.
Bruce Springsteen, right?
Oh, wait, has he recouped?
Did you name Hamilton? Did you include Hamilton?
Oh, no, I haven't named, I haven't finished. Yeah, Hamilton.
That's a fairly popular one, I understand.
You think? I don't know. That's iffy if it
Hamilton is doing great, and its investors call me and thank me on a regular basis.
Talk about the breakdown of that profit distribution.
The first thing that happens with the weekly income is you have to pay your bills. You pay the theater rent, you pay the theater percentage, all the crew, the cast, the orchestra, your advertising bills, all of that gets paid.
After the show pays all of their expenses, then the profits go to the investors and the producers, and they share the profits.
The way you've described the distribution, basically the producer, more than anyone else, by far, if it's a home run, you do really well. And if it's not, then you really don't.
You really don't. And here's the thing that people don't realize about producers. In other industries, people who are working on something get paid while they're working on it, not producers. I can work on something for 4 or 5 years. I'm not drawing a salary or I'm not getting any income. The only way that a producer really starts making money is when the show becomes a hit.
Hamilton had the experience of having a show go on sale on a given day with a block of tickets and watching the entire block of tickets sold within minutes. At first, we're happy. Wow, we sold all our tickets in a matter of minutes or an hour. But then what we learn is that a lot of consumers are frustrated that they could not buy tickets. And then we learn that those very tickets are being sold for 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 times their face value.
Jeffrey Seller wouldn't talk to us about actual Hamilton profits, but here's what we do know. So far this year, the Broadway version has taken in more than $140 million in ticket revenues. A 2016 New York Times estimate put annual operating costs at about $34 million. So that's a lot of profit to spread around to producers and investors, to Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote the show and originated the lead role, to the rest of the creative team, and so on. That said, the $140 million revenue figure is from the primary ticket market, not the secondary market run by brokers and scalpers.